Hello, film students, and welcome to our next movie, Some Like It Hot, our comedy film, and also our little lesson on director, their style. So let's get into it. The director's style. The director is kind of the unifying force over everything of the film, from the technical aspects to the human elements to the music to the cinematography. President Wilson, when describing the controversial and racial film The Birth of a Nation, said it was like writing history with lightning. And filmmaking can energize people kind of like no other medium because it is very powerful and moving. Movies are powerful, and sometimes they are accidental, sometimes they're purposeful. The director, like I said, is a unifying force that for many, many different creative people and ideas. He kind of brings it, he or she, all together. The amount of control depends on the director. Some directors are what we call an auteur. An auteur means that they write it, they write the music, they direct it, they even do some of the acting. We've seen Charlie Chaplin, Alfred Hitchcock. These are examples of an auteur. Some of them are just hired to shoot a film because they're good at what they do and they're organized and they keep people on task. Some are auteurs that create the idea, they write the script, they cast the film, they shoot it, they edit the final copy, all that good stuff. Most directors today are somewhere in between. Um, the concept of style. And so when we talk about directors, there are certain shots, certain pacing, certain elements, music, you name it, that are kind of go into the style. We have a picture here of Frozen if it was done by the director Tim Burton. Tim Burton has his unique kind of dark, twisted style that he brings to every kind of film that he does. So the director's personality is reflected in almost every decision that they make. They must choose the emotion, the pacing, the mood, the truthfulness, originality, the music, how to get the actors to do more or do less, you name it. The subject matter. Some directors kind of just stick to one thing. They do comedies, or they do horror films. Other directors bounce around. They try many different things. No other element reveals the style than the subject picked by a director. Christopher Nolan movies, they're all very headsy, very intellectual movies. They're very difficult to follow for a lot of people. Other directors, they just like explosions and boom, things like that. So the cinematography, they oversee the camera work, so they are the ones that kind of direct the pictures and all that good stuff. They usually choose their own cinematographer. They'll have their own right-hand man or woman. They'll have the objective camera, the camera that views the action from a remote location. We have subjective camera, where the viewer is you're in the action. You're kind of a point of view of a character. And then there's different factors of color and light and movement. They also have editing. The directors help determine the pace of the film. You have setting and set design. You have sound and score, casting and acting performances. Um, Most directors have a hand in picking who's cast, the casting directors and all that. Some directors are really good at getting more out of actors and actresses than others. Some directors are hard to work for. Almost every aspect of the actor's performance can be influenced by a director. There's certain directors like Woody Allen, for instance, who is an auteur, who really brings out a lot in the actors, and then they seem to perform better than they would. Almost like a coach can bring out more of their team or less. Screenplays and narrative structure, how to tell the story, the pacing, the point of view, the structure. We can start in the middle, you can start from the end, you're going to do a linear story. And then evolving styles and flexibility. Some directors change over time, even try different genres. Steven Spielberg is a great example of that. Started off with a lot of action kind of movies and thrillers, and then family movies, and then heavy subject material like Schindler's List and other things going on. Kubrick and Steven Spielberg are great examples of this. And then there's now the special edition, the director's cut. Sometimes they have to cut things out that they really didn't want, or they add things in they didn't like the shot, they weren't satisfied. George Lucas is notorious for this with Star Wars, which includes footage that had to be cut and often commentaries and things like that. And it's a lot of fun. They shoot pictures, don't they? The top 10 directors of all time, according to them, are number one, Alfred Hitchcock, followed by Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick, Federico Fellini, Jean-Luc Godard, Francis Ford Coppola, Akira Kurosawa, Ingmar Bergman, Jean Renoir, and John Ford, which we're watching quite a few of these. Many of these are foreign directors, and this is an American film class. So this is kind of some art that I found online. It's kind of interesting. It says if the directors did architecture, so 2001: Space Odyssey director Stanley Kubrick, we have Alfred Hitchcock if he designed his home based on his movies, Charlie Chaplin, very similar to modern times here. George Lucas, of course, would probably just have a Death Star to be honest. Wes Anderson, the Coen brothers, and then Tim Burton. And then we have Quentin Tarantino movies. We have Steven Spielberg, who made Jaws and all that fun stuff. So let's get to the comedy film. Critics don't love comedies, just like horror films. They're there to intrigue and emotion to pique that, and they're not really beloved by critics. They're not time honored traditions for the Academy Awards. Very few comedies have actually ever won. One of note is Annie Hall in '77, which beat out Star Wars. That's just a crock of poo, is what that is. But according to AFI, the number one comedy of all time is Some Like It Hot, which we're gonna watch. It is really funny, actually. And comedy is subjective. Some things are funny to others, some things are not. Tootsie, Dustin Hoffman cross-dressing movie. It's kind of funny. The top two were cross-dressing movies. Doctor Strangelove, Kubrick's slapstick, just Cold War. Very, very cynical view of the Cold War from the early '60s. Very, very funny movie if you ever check that out. Annie Hall, as mentioned before, Woody Allen's movie. Duck Soup, the Marx Brothers, very bizarre movie. Blazing Saddles, the controversial Mel Brooks movie from the '70s. MASH was actually a movie before the TV show. It Happened One Night, The Graduate, the 1960s movie. Once again, Dustin Hoffman's on here again. And then Airplane, kind of a just good old-fashioned slapstick, silly movie. Here's my top 10. Number 1, Dumb and Dumber, funniest movie of all time. Number 2, very closely behind, Blazing Saddles. 3, Animal House. Yeah, there's some inappropriate things, but it's really funny. Caddyshack, kind of in the same line. Napoleon Dynamite, for me, doesn't get much better than Napoleon Dynamite. South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut, which is very inappropriate. I am very well aware of that. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Strange Brew, that's a personal favorite of mine. You won't see that on a lot of lists, but it's very funny to me. Ghostbusters, and then The Big Lebowski, and then special shout out to Step Brothers. Probably should be on this list somewhere. I'm not sure why I left it out. I don't think The Big Lebowski is technically a comedy, but it is a great movie. So, Some Like It Hot from 1959. It stars Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, and Jack Lemmon. Directed by the auteur director, Billy Wilder, who does kind of everything himself. He's kind of a controversial guy. The film actually helped break down the production codes in the MPAA. It was released without their approval. And the reason why it was released is because Billy Wilder was a big director, and then you've got the star power of Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, and Jack Lemmon. It was actually banned briefly in Kansas because of the cross-dressing element. This movie is still relevant and funny today, maybe with our equality movement and kind of the LGBTQ community and transgender things. And there's some very funny double entendre things going on here. And so this is still a relevant comedy. It's not, like some old-fashioned movie. The movie was planned to be shot in color, but Curtis and Lemon's makeup looked green in the initial shot, so it didn't look good. Marilyn Monroe was kind of at the end of her life, really having a hard time with substance abuse and a couple divorces. She flubbed many of her lines. It took many takes. Her lines had to be taped onto objects for her to read. They took dozens of takes for her to just knock on the door and say, "It's me, Sugar." She just couldn't do it. In fact, her eccentric behavior delayed the film for 2 months and cost $500,000 over the budget. To keep her away from all the party scene, they filmed this at Coronado Island in San Diego. And the whole crew went and stayed at the hotel just so they could keep an eye on Marilyn Monroe, and it still didn't work out as well as it should have. This was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, winning 1 for Best Costume Design. On the American Film Institute, this is the 22nd greatest film. It's the 14th greatest film in 1997. It is the funniest movie according to the American Film Institute. Marilyn Monroe is the 6th greatest female legend. Well, Nobody's Perfect is the 48th greatest movie quote. I'm not going to spoil that one. It's pretty good. Rotten Tomatoes give it a 96%. They Shoot Pictures, Don't They, is on number 32. Billy Wilder is the 16th greatest director. Entertainment Weekly, this is held in high regard, number 9. It is on the Time Magazine all-time list. It's on the AMC Film Site list. IMDb has average fan rating of an 8.3 with a 112. British number 42 for the critics, and 37 for the directors. So, some like it hot. Hope you enjoy this film and hope you laugh a little bit. Thanks for tuning in.